Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and good Shabbos from Huntington. It's been a mixed day today, weather-wise. It was humid this morning, and then it rained for a bit. And now as I walk to shul, the sun came out, the clouds are breaking, and it's quite pleasant with a nice breeze. So it looks like summer, the last weekend of summer is going to be a temperate one. And looking forward to fall just around the corner. It is Friday evening, regardless of the weather. It is great to be here for Shabbat, and we're going to start by welcoming Shabbat with Kabbalat Shabbat, and we're going to first have Sam come up and light the Shabbos candles for us.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahalik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen. Thank you. Let's turn to page 6, and we'll read responsively in the middle of the page. May the door of this synagogue be wide enough to receive all who hunger for love, all who are lonely for fellowship.
May it welcome all who have cares to unburden, thanks to express, hopes to nurture.
May the door of this synagogue be narrow enough to shut out pettiness and pride, envy and enmity.
May its
Threshold be no stumbling block to young or straying feet.
May it be too high to admit complacency, selfishness, and harshness.
May the synagogue be for all who enter the doorway to a richer and more meaningful life.
All right, let's jump ahead to page 20. Page 20, and we'll go back to the older, or the usual Lecha Dodi this week. Last week we did a more Hasidic flavored one, and this week we'll go back to our old standby, and as usual, verses 1 and 2, 8 and 9. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibor echad, ishmi'anu el hamyuchad. Adonai echad u'shmo echad, l'shem u'tiferet v'lithilah. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki mekor ha'bracha, merosh mikedem nehesucha. Sof ma'aseh b'machshava techila, lecha Dodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela. Yamin u'smol tifrotzi, v'et Adonai taritzi, al yad ish ben partzi, v'nismecha v'nagila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela. Bo'i v'shalom ateret bala, gam b'simcha uv'sola, toch emunei am segula. Bo'i chala, lecha Dodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nekabela. Let's turn to page 222 and let's read from Psalm 92, the Psalm for Shabbat, a song for Shabbat. It is good to praise Adonai, to sing hymns to your name, O Most High, to proclaim your steadfast love at daybreak, your faithfulness each night, with a 10-stringed harp, with voice and lyre together. You have gladdened me by your deeds, Adonai. I shout for joy at your handiwork. How great are your works, Adonai! How very subtle your designs! A brute cannot know, a fool cannot understand this. And the Hebrew in the middle of the page. Tzadikata hamahar yifrach ke'erez balvanon yihiske shetulin beveit Adonai bechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu odyenuhun b'seva dishenim vera'ananim yihiyu lehagid ki ashar Adonai zuri velo avlatabo. And we turn to page 24. Shalom Alechem. We greet the angels who come to spend Shabbat with us each week. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaSharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei HaMlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem L'Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech, Malachei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Barchuni L'Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech, Malachei HaMlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzeitchem L'Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech, Malachei HaMlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We have welcomed Shabbat. We have eased our way into the evening. It's now on the cusp of Shabbat. Sunset is almost upon us, and we'll begin the evening service, the Arvit service for Shabbat, page 145 with Chatzi Kaddish. V'yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, Yalmad yivrach yerutei v'yamlik malchutei, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael. Bahagala, u'v'zman kariv, v'yimheru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevorach, le'olam olmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, V'tadar, v'talev, v'talal, shmei dekudusha, brichu, leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma, v'yimeru, amen. Page 146, Baruch Hu, the call to formal evening worship. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. And on page 147 near the bottom, let's read responsively. Adonai, your majesty is proclaimed by the marvels of earth and sky. Sun, moon, and stars testify to your power and wisdom.
The day follows day in endless succession, and the years vanish, but your sovereignty endures.
Though all things pass, let not your glory depart from us. Help us to become co-workers with you and endow our fleeting days with abiding worth. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'ariv Aravim. Top of page 148, Ahavat Olam. Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha Ahavta, Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadeta. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu, b'shochmeinu uvkumeinu, nasiach bechukecha, v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha, uv'mitzvotecha, le'olam va'ed. Ki heim chayenu v'yorech yameinu v'yorech yameinu uvahem nege yomam v'layla yomam v'layla ve'ahavatecha tasim mimenu li'olamim Baruch atah Adonai Ohev Amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levacha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol miotecha v'hayu advarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam V'shivtecha b'veitecha, uvlechtecha v'derech, uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha, ukshartam liot al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha, uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha, uv'hisharecha. Leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai, v'tem kedoshim le'Elohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem, asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, liot lachem le'Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem. On the middle of page 151, let's read responsively in English. We worship the power that unites the universe, a promise of harmony for all.
Yet that oneness eludes our grasp as imperfection and evil abound.
Before our eyes, there is a vision of perfection, order, and goodness.
There is evil enough to break the heart, and there is good enough to exalt the soul.
When will redemption come?
When we grant everyone what we claim for ourselves.
Long ago, we escaped the tyranny of Egypt. Our people saw the power of the Most High.
We learned God's presence redeems time and event, so we celebrate this power that makes for freedom.
Top of page 152. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh, norati lo seif eleh, malchutecha ra'u vanecha, bokeyam lifnei Moshe, ze eli anu v'amru, Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed, v'ne'emar ki fad Adonai et Yaakov, u'ga'alo mi'er chazak mimenu, Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. Top of page 153, the top two lines, or the first two lines of Hashkivenu. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. And let's read together in the English. Give us a place to rest, O God. Shelter us in the long, soft evening shadows of your truth. You are true protection and safety. In your presence we find love and acceptance. Watch over us as we go forth. Prepare for us as we return. Spread over us your shelter of peace, over all we love, over our Jerusalem and yours. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu, v'al kol amo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim. And now top of page 154, it's not Shabbat without Vishamru. In the top of 154, verses from the book of Exodus. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael, et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, ledorotam berit olam. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael, et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, ledorotam berit olam. Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael, oti li'olam. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, ledorotam berit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim v'et haaretz, v'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, ledorotam berit olam. Uvayom hashvi'i shavat vayinafash, shavat vayinafash, shavat vayinafash, v'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, ledorotam berit olam. Now we're at the centerpiece of the evening service, the Amidah, also known as Tefillah. We'll begin together on pages 155, 156, and 157. We'll chant together in Hebrew, and then we'll continue silently 158 through 167. And at this time, you can chant along with us in Hebrew, read along in the English, or offer up your own private prayer. But we're going to begin together on page 155. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagi tehilatecha. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagi tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu ve'imotenu Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor B'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'konei Hakol, V'zocher chastei avot v'imahot, u'mevi goel livnei b'neihem, leman shemo b'ahava, melech ozer u'moshia u'magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magin Avraham, v'ezrat Sarah, atah gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechaye metim atarav lahoshia, morid hatal, mechalkel chayim bechesed, mechaye metim berachamim rabim, somech noflim verofei cholim, umatir asurim, Umekayeh be'emunato lishenei afar michamocha b'gevurot umidon melach melech memit umechayeh umatzmiach Yeshua Leman atah lachayot metim, Baruch atah Adonai, mechayeh hametim. Let's turn back to page 160 and let's read the words together in the middle of the page. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may we all live in such a way that this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. Let's jump ahead to page 163 and let's read responsively at the top of the page. For the good in us, which calls us to a better life, we give thanks.
For the strength to improve the world with our hearts and our hands, we offer praise.
For the desire in us, which leads us to work for peace, we are grateful.
For life and nature, harmony and beauty, for the hope of tomorrow, all praise to the source of being.
Page 164 will continue with Shalom Rav. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki atahu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rahav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rahav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov be'enecha levarech et Amcha Yisrael b'chol eit u'b'chol sha'ah Bishlomecha. Shalom Rahav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rahav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. And let's read responsibly in the middle of the page. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country as a safeguard of peace, its advocate among the nations. May contentment reign within our borders, health and happiness within our homes.
Strengthen the bonds of friendship and fellowship among all the inhabitants of our world. Plant virtue in every soul, and may the love of your name hallow every home and every heart.
Praised are you, Adonai, who blesses your people with peace. Baruch atah Adonai, hamivorech et amo Yisrael, v'shalom. We're going to jump ahead to page 253, the Mishaberach, the prayer for healing. If you have anyone who needs some special healing or a little extra healing this Shabbat, keep them in your thoughts and close to your heart. Whether it's a physical healing, an emotional or spiritual healing, keep them close. And we're in the middle of page 253. Mishaberach Avotenu Mikor habracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach Imotenu Mikor habracha Leavotenu. neshama, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. All right, we're on page 258. The prayers for our community. We'll read together the prayer for our congregation, the prayer for our country, and then the prayer for the state of Israel. Source of all being, may the children of this community learn these passions from us: love of Torah, devotion in prayer, and support of the needy. May we guide with integrity, and may our leadership be in your service. May those who teach and nourish us be blessed with satisfaction, and may we appreciate their time and their devotion. Bless us with the fruits of wisdom and understanding, and may our efforts bring fulfillment and joy. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otcha levadcha b'yirah na'avod. Thus says Adonai, this is what I desire, to unlock the fetters of wickedness and untie the cords of lawlessness, to let the oppressed go free, to break off every yoke. Share your bread with the hungry and take the wretched poor into your home. When you see the naked, give clothing, and do not ignore your own kin. If you banish the yoke from your midst, the menacing hand, the evil speech, if you offer compassion to the hungry and satisfy the famished creature, then your light shall shine in darkness. The middle of page 259. Avinu Shabbat Shamayim, Tzur Yisrael v'Go'alo, Barech et Medinat Yisrael, Reshit Smichat Gulatenu, Hagein Aleha Bi'avrat Chastecha, Ufros Aleha Sukat Shlomecha, Ushlach Orcha V'Amitcha L'Rasheha Sareha V'Yoetzeha, V'Taknem Be'etza Tova Milfanecha, V'Natata Sholom Ba'aretz, V'Simchat Olam Liyoshveha, V'Nomar Amen. O Heavenly One, Protector and Redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love. Spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. Amen. Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and good Shabbos. It is Parshat Ki Tavo. Moving quickly through the book of Devarim, the last book of the Torah, as we make our way to the high holidays and ultimately to Simchat Torah. What's going on in this week's Parsha is Moshe's addressing the time when the Israelites will ultimately settle in the land of Israel. He's setting out for them what they're going to do, the kinds of rituals, what their behavior, what is expected of them. And he lays out the offering of the first fruits. And this is a bit of pageantry that takes place when people would bring the first fruits to the temple to dedicate it to God. And part of the ceremony is that they remember, that the Israelites remember their history, their ignoble beginning as slaves, and then ultimately God freed them and led them to the land that they're possessing. Moshe reminds them to set aside a tenth of the yield. This is where we get the idea of tithing, right? A tenth, so that the Levite, the stranger, the orphan, and the widow can have food to eat. Moshe reminds them that if they keep all of the commandments, they will be an Am Segula, a treasured people, often interpreted or translated as a chosen people, but it really means a treasured people, close to God. When they settle the land, they get a command that they are to set up plaster-covered stones at Mount Ebal. and to write on them these teachings. And scholars go back and forth what exactly the teachings are. Is it particularly maybe this set of commandments to set up these stones and to paint them? Perhaps it's the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 utterances, or something else. And at that point, they're to build an altar to God. And to divide up the tribes of Shimon, Simeon, Levi, Yehuda, Yissachar, Yosef, and Benjamin. They are to stand on Mount Gerizim, and they're going to hear the blessings that Moshe is going to say are waiting for Bnei Yisrael if they follow the commands. And then on Mount Ebal, we have Reuven, Gad, Asher, Naphtali, Zebulun, and Dan, the other 6 tribes, and they're going to stand there and hear the curses. This week's Torah portion, Moshe explicitly lines out blessings and curses for Bnei Yisrael. If they listen and they obey the law, they will have blessings, and if they don't, they will have curses. And Moshe says, if you follow the commandments, you will have plenty. You will dwell securely in the land, and you will know peace. And if not, you will know exile and agony and want. And so Moshe ends this week's parsha with, therefore observe faithfully all the terms of this covenant, that you may succeed in all that you undertake. Right? Moshe, once again, pleading with the children of Israel to heed his words, to listen to him, so that they may know security and peace when they get into the land. All right, that's this week's Torah portion in a nutshell. And believe it or not, friends, we are at statement or utterance number 7. 7 out of 10. We're 70% of the way done. And this week, it's lo tin af. You shall not commit adultery. Now, technically, the Torah is very specific about what adultery is. Right? It's a man having sexual intercourse with a married woman who is not his wife. And it's actually a married woman or a betrothed woman, a woman who is engaged to be married. So a man having sex with a married woman who is not his wife, or with a woman who is engaged to another man. And it's a death sentence. The Torah paints out a grim picture for those who do this. It's a death sentence for both of them. But the Torah doesn't say how. The Torah doesn't say you'll take them out and stone them. You will take them out and behead them. Right? But the rabbis come up with the idea of strangulation, which could probably be a form of hanging. Right? So they're taken out and killed. But the rabbis are tricky, just like with murder last week, where they put up a whole bunch of steps for it to become a capital case. The same here with adultery. 2 witnesses have to come in on the unlucky couple. The witnesses have to explain and interrupt them and say, you know what you're doing? It's a sin. It's adultery. It's a capital crime. And the 2 people who are engaged in the adulterous activity, they have to acknowledge that, yes, in fact, they know that they're committing adultery. And yes, in fact, they know that it's a capital crime. And yes, in fact, they're still going to continue even with all of this knowledge. I'm not quite sure if the rabbis were trying to be funny or just trying to distance themselves from having to carry out public executions. That's an interesting idea, that the rabbis try to write the death penalties out of existence. But what the rabbis seem to, or what the rabbis agree with, is that the Torah here, with this idea of not committing adultery, is that they're trying to legislate biology. Right? They're saying that, yes, we know human beings can be randy, and yes, human beings want what they want, but you can't have whomever you want. You can't just walk up to a woman and take her. You just can't have her if she's someone else's wife or betrothed to someone. The Torah is in a way setting up boundaries for us so that the community is protected, so that we can have instilled in us a sense of trust, that we can trust our neighbors to know that they're not going to murder us, that they're not going to take our spouses, our partners. They're ultimately not going to steal from us. They're not going to want what we have in such a way that they are willing to just take it. But it's interesting here because the Torah, for all of it talking about no adultery, you won't commit adultery, the Torah isn't saying that monogamy is the only way to go. In fact, we know that most of our biblical ancestors, right? Abraham had a couple of wives. Isaac only had one wife. He's the notable exception. Maybe Moshe. Moshe only has one wife that's named. But lots of characters in the Bible are polygamous. All right? And it's a man. A man can have more than one wife. Right? That's why it's not saying a married man who sleeps with someone. It's a man can be married, and if he sleeps with someone who is not betrothed to another man or is not another man's wife, it's less problematic. Right? Usually that woman would then become one of his wives if he's sleeping with her. But the interesting thing is that a woman can only have one husband at a time. Right? So a man can have multiple wives, but a woman can only have one husband at any given time. And really, the law of the Torah sets up polygamy as a perfectly valid lifestyle. Right? If you can afford to have multiple wives, the Torah seems to be suggesting, you can have them. And gay gesindte hate, go and be healthy. All of this comes to an end, though, right? We notice that we don't have a lot of people, we don't have any Jews in America, really, walking around with multiple wives, right? That's been done away with. And it's not just because we live in America where it's been done away with. A rabbi named Rabbeinu Gershom in the 11th century, 1,000 years ago, banned polygamy. He said he outlawed it. One rabbi stood up, he outlawed it, but only for Ashkenaz Jews. Only for Jews who are living in Western and Northern Europe was this ban in effect. For Sephardi and Mizrahi Jews who lived in Spain, the upper part of Africa, and into what is now the modern day Middle East, it was okay. He wasn't legislating for them because in that part of the world, in Spain, especially Muslim Spain, North Africa, and into the Middle East, polygamy was the rule of the day. It was only in Christian Europe where polygamy was banned by the Christians. And then Rabbeinu Gershom said, in order to protect my community, the Ashkenaz community, we are going to do away with polygamy. The modern state of Israel, however, makes room for polygamous families, especially if those Jews are coming from a country where polygamy is still allowed, where it's still legal. And the edict, the takana of Rabbeinu Gershom, was to last for 1,000 years. So guess what? It just, within the last decade or so, was expired. And the rabbis of today decided that we liked it so much that we just decided that we were going to kick it in for another 1,000 years. So polygamy is still outlawed, even though the original ban had expired. The Torah doesn't talk a lot about sexual ethics It does in the book of Leviticus when we're dealing with who the priest can marry and things like that. But whatever it is talking about in terms of family relations, it's weighted heavily towards the males, right? The male can have multiple wives. The male can divorce his wife. And they lived in a patriarchal society and also a patrilineal society, right? So it was male dominated, and the son or the daughter became a member of the father's tribe. It was patrilineal. But nonetheless, we do have, this is all in the context of marriage as well, right? In a society that's polygamous, there's still the idea of marriage. And the Torah says that marriage, in fact, is important, and they sanctify it. It's a holy covenant, and it's called kiddushin. And kiddush comes from the word hekdesh, which means set aside. So when you enter into a marriage contract, the person you are marrying in the Torah's mind, the idea of a man and a woman, the woman is set aside for the husband. She is only for him. It's not he is only for her, because he could have multiple wives in the Torah, but she is set aside for him. And that's the reason why you need a get if you're going to get a divorce, right? Even in the modern world, where we have civil divorces in all branches of Judaism, if you're going to dissolve your civil marriage and you had a religious marriage, you have to get a get, which dissolves that. And if you don't get a get, and this is a problem in the ultra-Orthodox community, not only the ultra-Orthodox community, but in the Orthodox community in general, that men will leave their wives but won't give them a divorce. The man will go off and find himself a woman that he wants to have a relationship with. He won't marry her, but he'll set up house with her and everything, and he'll leave his wife. She becomes what's called an aguna, a chained woman. She can't get married because he hasn't divorced her. If she marries another man, she's now committing adultery. And that opens up all sorts of legal problems. So in the ultra-Orthodox and the Orthodox and the ultra-Orthodox community, this is a problem. So much so that rabbis who have heard the cries of these women have sent out thugs, right? Jewish thugs, to go and help the man come to his senses. Sometimes he has an accident. He falls down the steps 4 or 5 or 6 times. Or he trips while coming home from the store and falls on a baseball bat a number of times, breaking his leg. Now, I'm not saying that I know of anybody who has done this or anybody or any rabbi who would sanction that. But, accidents do happen. And then lo and behold, sooner or very soon, the woman who needs a get has gotten herself a get. But this is a problem. This is a problem. You don't hear a lot about it because the Orthodox communities tend to be very insular, but these stories do make it to the news on occasion. Hosea, the 8th century prophet, says that marriage is important and likens God's relationship to Israel as a marriage bond. So when God gets upset that we commit adultery, it's like we are cheating on God. So the rabbis take this idea of marriage and adultery and extend it in a metaphor. But notwithstanding this command of not to commit adultery and all the attendant stuff that goes with it, Judaism has always held sexuality as being something positive, as long as it's in the proper context. And that's a discussion for another time. Liberal Judaism that is not Orthodox in practice, the Reform movement, the Conservative movement, the Reconstructionist movement, includes LGBTQ people in its sexual ethic. and allows for gay couples and lesbian couples to marry, to have a ceremony inside the synagogue. It's different than in a marriage ceremony. It's different. It's not called really a marriage, because a marriage in the Torah is strictly between a man and a woman. But the modern rabbis have come up with the equivalent. And that also means that gay and lesbian couples that are married in a synagogue with a ritual, if they decide to dissolve their civil marriage, they have to dissolve the Jewish marriage as well, and they have to get a get. And all this has happened within the last 30 years, within the last 20 years in the conservative movement, where we have come up with rituals and rights for LGBTQ people to marry. So that's the seventh of the 10. That's no committing adultery. There's a very famous joke. Moses comes down off of the mountain, and the people are waiting for him, and they say, what happened? What did God say? What did God say? Moshe says, I've got good news and I've got bad news. The good news is I've got God down to 10 commandments. The bad news is adultery is still in. And so that's a little bit of 10 Commandments humor for us this evening. All right, we are at Aleinu, and is there a Siddur close at hand that has, not a Don Olam, what do we want to do? For the closing hymn, Ein Keloheinu, yes. Can I get I'll get that for you. All right, but because that's gonna be our closing song for this evening, Ein Keloheinu, and we're gonna continue on page 282. Thank you, Sam. Sure. 282 with Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach l'Adon hakol hatet gedula liotzer breshit shelo asanu k'goyei haratzot velo samanu k'mishpachot hadama shelo sam chelkeinu kahem v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam va'anachnu korim Umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu shehu notei shamayim v'yoser haaretz umoshev yikaro b'shamayim imal ushchinatu zo b'gov hei meromim Hu Eloheinu Einod, Emet Malkeinu Efes Ulato, Kakahatu B'Torato, V'yadata Hayom V'Hashevota, Elevavecha, Ki Adonai Hu Elohim, B'Shamayim Imal, V'al haaretz, mitachat ein. Let's read together on the top of page 285. Let the time not be distant, O God, when all shall turn to you in love, when corruption and evil shall give way to integrity and goodness, when superstition shall no longer enslave the mind, nor idolatry blind the eye. When may all created in your image become one in spirit and one in friendship, forever united in your service. Then shall your realm be established on earth, and the word of your prophet fulfilled. Adonai will reign forever and ever. V'ne'emar v'haya Adonai Lamelech al kol haaretz Bayom hahu Yeh Adonai echad Ushemo echad. This week we observed the following yard sites: David Wolf, Barbara Levin's son, Ann Island, Ed Island's sister-in-law, Sylvia Finn Gerstein, Martha Schnitt, related to Sid Schnitt, Dorothy Gold Bro, second wife of Pat Bro, mother of Andy Bro, Stanley Sklov, and David Sklov, Lillian Elderman Kolker, Joe's wife, Lee and Matt's mother, Eva Strauss Sophie, related to Harold and Ida Strauss, Mildred Topolowski, grandmother of Jason Solov, Charlotte Blackman Fish, Francis's mother, Pauline's cousin, Susan Margot Bro, Henry and Betsy's daughter, Harold Kagan, married to Frida's husband and father to Scott, Drew, and Brent, Esther Rotenberg, Joan Lerner's aunt, Albert Schlossberg, Rose Kaplan Teplis, Beatrice Bear Weil, Richard Weil's mother, Evelyn Weil, wife of Marty, Arnold Gottfried, Nan Tesser's father. May their souls be bound up in the bond of life eternal. May their memories be a blessing to us always, and may they all rest in peace. Mourner's Cottage, page 294. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlik malchutei, b'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevorach le'olam l'mei maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpahar v'yitroman v'yitnaseh. V'yit hadar, v'yit alev, v'yit halal, shmei dekudisha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, v'amiram be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, Hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. In my rush to get through Aleinu and the end of the service, I forgot Psalm 27. Oh, and it's my favorite psalm, and I miss it when we don't read it. So it's not in your Sidurim, but we have copies here, and so I'll have Sam and James read with responsively. A psalm of David. Adonai is my light and my help. Whom shall I fear? Adonai is the strength of my life. Whom shall I dread?
When evils draw near to slander me, when the foes threaten, they stumble and fall. Though armies be arrayed against me, I have no fear. Though wars threaten, I remain steadfast in my faith.
One thing I ask of Adonai, for this I yearn, to dwell in the house of Adonai all the days of my life, to behold God's beauty, to pray in God's sanctuary.
Hide me in his shrine, safe from peril. God will shelter me beyond the reach of disaster, and raise my head high above my enemies.
I will bring God offerings with shouts of joy, singing, chanting praise to Adonai.
Adonai, hear my voice when I call. Be gracious to me and answer. It is you whom I seek, says my heart. It is your presence that I seek, Adonai.
Do not hide from me. Do not reject your servant. You have always been my help. Do not abandon me. Forsake me not, my God of deliverance.
Though my father and my mother leave me, Adonai will care for me.
Teach me your way, Adonai. Guide me on the right path to confound my oppressors.
Do not abandon me to the will of my foes, for false witnesses have risen against me. purveyors of malice and lies.
Yet I have faith that I shall surely see Adonai's goodness in the land of the living. Hope in Adonai, be strong, take courage, and hope in Adonai. Lule hamanti lerot b'tuv Adonai be'eretz chayim. Kaveh el Adonai, chazak v'yametz libecha, v'kaveh el Adonai. And because we added the extra psalm, and after Kaddish, we'll say Kaddish one more time. An extra Kaddish this evening on page 294. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah v'alma divrach hirutei v'amlik malchutei v'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael ba'agalav v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevorach le'olam alomei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitroman v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmeit kudsha brichu le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata da'amiram b'yama v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Shabbat shalom, everyone, and good Shabbos. I want to say Todah Rabbah and Yasher Koach to Sam and James for being here this evening and being the choir, and Sam being the tech guru that he is on Friday nights. Services tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. and then again Sunday at 9 a.m. Sunday at 3 p.m. You have the Zoom link, an invite. We have our second holiday class, and we're going to be covering the 10 days in between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Shmini Atzeret, and Sukkot. Did I say Sukkot twice?
I'm the wrong person to ask.
It's not Sukkot. I did say Sukkot twice now. Sukkot, Shmini Atzeret, and Simchat Torah. There we go. And that'll be on Sunday afternoon at 3. And then Tuesday evening, if you were a board member, you will get a Zoom invite for the board meeting. It's at 7 o'clock on Tuesday night. And then Wednesday, of course, is the best Yiddish choir on, well, just about anywhere, really. And that's at 7 o'clock, and you'll get your Zoom invite for that. And then we'll be back here next Friday. So a bunch of things going on this week, as we are just 2 weeks away from the high holidays. In 2 weeks, we'll be having Rosh Hashanah services at this time, right? So it's exciting time. It's exciting time. So I see who's on this evening. We have Patty Ann, good Shabbos from 89th Street, JPA. I love it. Melanie, good Shabbos, also from Brooklyn. Stephen Sayer, good Shabbos to all. Transplant from Huntington to Dallas. So we're in Texas tonight. Jenny Bro from Cincinnati wishes us a Shabbat Shalom. And Tori Wutcher right here in Huntington, Shabbat Shalom. So thank you all for wishing us Shabbat Shalom. And we look forward to seeing more. All right, let's close out our service this evening, 322, with Ein Keloheinu. Ein Keloheinu, Ein Kadoneinu, Ein Kemalkeinu, Ein Kemoshienu, Mi Cheloheinu, Mi Chadoneinu, Mi Chemalkeinu, Mi Chemoshienu. No del Eloheinu, no del Adoneinu, no del Emalkeinu, no del Moshienu. Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adoneinu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu. Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adoneinu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu, Atahu Shektiru, Avahotenu, Lefanecha Eketoret Hasamim. Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and good Shabbos. We'll see you soon.